Check, check, check 1, 2. Hey, I'm just testing the stream. I made some changes to the audio outputs. So I just want to make sure all that stuff is coming in. This may take a minute. You can fast forward through all of this. Okay, let's see what the looks like that's only on one side. Okay, now we're in action. Let's see, pan left, pan right. Okay, audio is working, but the connection is fine. I'll go with this. Okay, so I'm not sure if the audio is choppy at your end. Just, when you watch the stream, let me know. I can do this class again. I've been having some internet issues over the past 2 days, so I'm not sure what's going on. I need to check with my ISP and just figure that out. But I'll go through this class anyway, and I'll keep it short because it seems fine for me, but in case there's any choppy audio, you can let me know and I'll just redo this class. So basically, what I'm looking at today is we've taken the drums from the previous class and we've just taken it up a notch, and then I've mixed everything else into it. Okay, so here we've got the drums. It's pretty much the same from previous class. The processing is pretty much all there. Don't need that. Thank you. So as you can see, we've got a group with the kick and the snare and all that stuff, and we've got some parallel processing going on here as well. So that's about it. I haven't changed anything from the previous class. It's exactly the same. So what we're going to do in this class is go to the buses and do a little bit more processing on the bus to just make the drums pop extra. All right, and just make them hit harder and sort of maybe reduce the dynamic range a little bit. So I'm just going to disable the two processes that I have going on. One is just a basic EQ I have going on the group, on the folder. I call these groups because it's easier to say group than folder. And I've got the drum master bus over here where I have a clipper running. That's it. I've added two plugins from what we did in the previous class, and let's see how much further that has taken the drum mix. Yeah, let's start you. Yeah, so this is just the EQ. Right, not much, just a little bit of a cut at 655. Barely audible, okay? But makes a huge difference when you throw the clipper on after that. So this is the clipper. You can download this for free from When Audio. It's called Free Clip. Basically, clippers are just really, really extreme limiters. They're brick wall limiters that add distortion. So it's kind of like when you overload a preamp on a mixing console, you get this kind of nice analog clipping. So that's what we're trying to emulate here, and also reduce the dynamic range overall. So we can reduce dynamic range and keep things loud, because what a clipper does is it brings the lower stuff, it brings it up in the mix, because it's reducing the upper limit of the waveform. So by doing that, it's obviously increasing everything on the bottom, sort of crushing things. Think of it like a compactor just crushing a car or something. That's kind of what a limiter does. So we're taking the same thing and putting it in a smaller space. And depending on the quality of the limiter, depending on the type of limiter you're using, you can get away with quite a bit of that without changing the sound too much, or you can change the sound quite a bit with the limiter, and it will ultimately achieve some pleasing results, like a nice analog distortion kind of thing. So let's put the limiter on. Let's see what that does. This is with the limiter and without. With and without. So we've actually reduced the overall peak level of this track, of the drum mix, but we've made it louder because we are sort of clipping the peaks off and is raising the volume. Right? So that's what the clipper is doing. I also have an EQ here, which you could use if you wanted, pre or post clip, whatever you want. Let's see what this guy is doing. Just cutting the highs a little bit. No. So I've left it off. I probably didn't like it when I did this. So it's just clipping and a bit of EQ on the master bus. That's it. Can you do more to the drums? Absolutely, you can. But with these particular drums and with the way they sound, I'm kind of happy with this. I don't need to do any more. Always ask yourself, do you need more? And right now I don't. So I'm going to leave it at this and then move on to the other stuff. So the important thing here isn't the EQ. The EQ again is barely doing anything. Just I've got a bit of odd resonance here that's coming up with the clipper enabled, so I've just cut that on the group. So whatever's going into the clipper has less of that stuff. It's mainly just the clipper that's doing all the heavy lifting here. So the clipper just bringing the drums forward. It's making it a little bit more present, making it a bit punchier. It's actually doing quite a lot. And having a good clipper is super handy. This is a fantastic free alternative for a paid clipper. There are other ones out there which I don't own. I just use this because it kind of gets the job done. There are clippers built into Reaper as well. So if you just go into the plugins folder and hit clip, you will find the Event Horizon clipper, soft clipper, and all that stuff, which you could use if you want. But I prefer free clip for a host of reasons, because it has a lot more different types of clipping. Experiment with these. I have no idea what these mean. To be honest, I'm guessing it's like the curve, how hard or how smooth the clipping is. It doesn't really matter what you're seeing on the screen. Use your ears, use whatever sounds good to you. Go crazy, spend some time, whenever you get a new plugin, just push it, push the input, reduce the output, check different types of oversampling, just see what it does, get a feel for it when you're not working on a track. So this is kind of like practice, it's getting to know your instrument. A clipper is very, very useful. It's used in everything from mixing to sound design. So get free clip. It's really nice. I prefer it to the stock stuff that comes with Reaper. It also has oversampling, which is great, and it's free. Yeah. So it is available for Mac also. So that's that. I've just put a clipper on the drums. I'm happy with it. I might do some other stuff to it later, but for now that's good. So next thing we're going to look at is the bass. So let's see what's going on with this guy. So again, I've not done a whole lot with the bass. I've just brought the levels. These are all just leveled out. Absolutely no processing happening on the individual lines. Let's see what's happening down here. I've adjusted the gain on the items themselves, so I brought them down by about 25 dB. You can bring that out how much ever you want, and they're all the same, all exactly the same. Where the bass is getting its color is I'm sending the DI signal to a distortion, SansAmp to be specific. SansAmp is great, especially if you can get your hands on the SansAmp PSA, which is unfortunately only available with Pro Tools. But there is a hardware version of it. It is amazing on bass. It's like one of the best distortion boxes I think ever made. So basically the DI is just going to that. So I've got that, right? And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to bring the bass forward, okay? So it doesn't matter what I'm doing unless you understand why I'm doing it. So I'm trying to bring the bass forward. I love the way the bass sounds. I have no problem with it. It's fine. It's great. I don't really need to do anything to it. But what I want to do is I wanted to make sure that it's in front of the drums in terms of the depth of the mix, right? But again, I need it to be like I can't pump the volume of it because it's a high real estate instrument. It takes up a lot of space in your mix, takes up a lot of headroom. So I need to keep it low in the mix, but also keep it up front. So when you're trying to do things like that, distortion is your friend. It will bring things to the foreground, but keep the levels low because of all that juicy harmonic content that it's adding. Also, the SansAmp is throwing this thing out of phase. Also, the fact that I have a high pass filter is also inverting the phase because this is basically a 180 phase flip over here. And what I'm doing to compensate for that is I do have the SansAmp signal inverted. Now you can I'm using Guitar Rig and an EQ to do this. You can use this guy. This is free from TSE Audio. BOD Overdrive. It's a fantastic SansAmp plugin. I have used this also on a lot of my commercial mixes. Get this. This is great. Or you can use any distortion plugin. It really doesn't matter what you use. The concept is basically I'm using distortion to add a little bit of harmonic content so that the bass comes forward in the mix, but I'm not increasing the volume to do that. I'm also using Saturn. Again, this is more distortion, but this is a tape style distortion. I'm using old tape. Why am I using old tape? Should be using warm tape. But this sounds nicer. Or should I use warm tape? No, definitely old tape. That sounds great. Yeah. Okay, so I'm using this because it's just making it fatter. You hear that like all the low end is like always up front, and I'm just blending that in very, very slightly into the mix, just to have that bottom end. So when you're listening to this on subs and things like that, you'll always feel the presence of that low end. Now, you don't have to use Saturn to do this. There are a lot of free tape emulation plugins out there. One of the best tape emulation plugins that you can get your hands on is Air Windows, Bespoke Digital Audio. These are VST plugins made by one guy. They're fantastic. Also, my internet is just being whatever. So check it out. Air Windows has some tape plugins you can use. They sound pretty much just as good as Saturn does, but Saturn is my go-to plugin. I've used it a lot for years now, so I tend to gravitate towards that. But since you don't have it, you can use this. I'm going to put it in production links. Air Windows at okay, a lot of great plugins there. Check them out. Fantastic. Okay, going back to the bass. That's it. That's all that's happening to the bass here. Nothing else. I have one more channel here, which is basically some compression, but I didn't like the way that sounded. All I needed was this, and I was good to go. So that's the bass with the parallel processing and without. So the effect here is just bringing it to the foreground a little bit and adding a bit more height to it by giving it that bottom end harmonic. That's it. Nothing else. Very, very simple, because the bass sounds good. Don't need to do a lot to it. Now on this end, on the master bus, which is basically receiving all of these inputs, right? And now it's just one signal. This is where I'm doing all the heavy lifting. So the first thing, I've got Bass Professor, which is basically multi-band compression. So I'm just going to switch all this off. Right, so just making the low end more consistent, making the mid-range more consistent, and just sort of like a frequency-dependent compression. Now, if you won't be able to use Bass Professor even though it's free, because it's Windows only, so you can just use RIA Xcomp. It's basically like Recomp, right? But you have 3 different channels over here for compression. So you can just solo the low end and compress that, or you can solo the mid-range and compress that separately, and the highs. For the bass, I would just recommend doing a low and a high. You don't need this 3rd channel, so you can just delete that. So let's go here, just listen to the low end. Let's see where I want to cut that off. That's pretty good. Listen to this. And also I've got solo current band enabled. So every time I select a band, it will just solo only that frequency range, right? Okay, I'm not changing any other settings for now. I'm just leaving it as it is, but you can mess with it. It's just exactly the same settings as Recomp, and we'll be doing a separate class on multiband compression. Is something you really need to get into very deep. So we're going to do a separate class on it later, but just get your hands on it, have fun with it, and just mess around with the settings, because these are all settings that you know and you understand from Recomp. The only thing that's adding is you can just do it frequency wise, right? So you have 2 compressors for each of the frequency ranges. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to compensate for the gain. There's an auto makeup. I don't like it. It sucks. Don't use it. I just use gain compensation manually. So with this, you can also shape the tone of the bass, right? So let's remove solo current band. And master bus master compensation, just take you up. That's it. So it's just making the low end and the high end more consistent, but compressing them separately. Right? So I'm achieving kind of the similar results I'm getting from Bass Professor. except Bass Professor is a bit more extreme with its compression. So you could achieve that, you just need to spend a little bit more time with Rex Comp. But the other things Bass Professor offers is like it's splitting the bands up quite a bit. You can do this because essentially Bass Professor is a plugin made from the JS plugins in Reaper. It's basically just a recode of the JS plugins that come with Reaper. So it is the same stuff, same processing. And yeah, it's split up into a lot more bands, and I can control that, and it's just much quicker. It's designed for bass. It's easier to use. But essentially, this is just multi-band compression, right? Let's do that. That's getting closer. Maybe add a band. Feels tighter, feels more consistent. Could use both maybe. Nice. So I'm just going to stick to Bass Professor for now because I've already dialed in the settings I want. But you can use React Comp, or you could not use Bass Professor altogether. It's totally up to you. The reason I'm using it, again, the concept behind it is I'm just trying to even out the levels between the low end and the top end of the bass, because depending on the note that's being played, some things may sound a bit louder than the other. This is a fairly consistent bass, so you don't really need to do this, but I like to have it going. And again, it's very subtle even for me. After that, I've just got an EQ boosting 200 hertz and a high pass at 25 hertz. Pretty basic stuff. I've got sidechain compression going on with the kick drum, so every time the kick drum hits, the bass ducks a little bit. And I've got a channel strip here that is doing, I don't know what this is doing honestly, but basically there's a bit of a boost, a low shelf boost, and another boost. I don't know. I don't think I need this honestly. Let's just see what this sounds like without this. So it's just the low shelf boost, which actually I kind of like. So it's just that I've just got a little bit of a boost, a 2 dB boost at around 80 hertz and below. That's it. That's all this guy is doing. So don't be thrown off by the fancy GUI. It's just a low shelf boost at 80 hertz and below. So you can do the same thing with re-EQ. It's basically just that. That's all that plugin is doing, really nothing else. I think I just had it on my chain and I just used it. So this is like a default bass processing chain that I've made, and it was there, so why not? So that's it. And then I've got a trim, which is just basically reducing this by 6 dB. So let's see what that sounds like with the drums. So you see how it feels like it's in front of the drum kit, and it's not behind the drum kit or somewhere else. Like it feels like the bass player is in front of the drum kit. This helps, of course. And I've got a little bit of a gain. I'm cutting this by about 6 dB. Don't need this to be that extreme. I can reduce that. Nice. There we go. So that's drums and bass taken care of. Next thing, look at the keyboard. This keyboard sounds fantastic. I have zero problems with it whatsoever. I don't need to do anything except it's got a little too much bottom end. So it's basically just clashing a lot with the bass. Let's get rid of this. So without this, it's sort of really eating into the low end of the bass, which I don't need on the keyboard, honestly. So I've just got a low shelf on it, that's it. And a bit of a cut at around 1.2. That's it. There's nothing else happening on the keyboard. It's panned a little bit to the left, stereo panned, so basically it's left, right, and the whole image is moved slightly to the left. That's it. Nothing else on the keyboard, and it's kind of sorted. Then we've got the guitar, which is for some reason also receiving keyboard. I don't know why that's happening. Yeah. I don't know how that happened. So yeah, here we go. Here's guitar. Again,